Hello and welcome to this episode of the Game Dev London podcast, a mini-series about game development, sponsored by Samsung King's Cross, London's hub of innovation. Today I am your host Stuart, Ville, he, him, and my co-host is Shin, she, her. So today, Jay, we're going to be talking about networking, the how to do it right, how to do it wrong. Where should we begin?
So again, in the previous episode, we were talking about, okay, we've decided to become, to work in indie games. Either you're starting up or you're actually going to be part of a team. Today, we're going to be talking about how to actually form that team and how to actually find people that are your people and that are going to help you make this amazing video game, hopefully.
Right, yeah.
So why do we network?
So for the fun of it, or hopefully not for the fun of it, or maybe for both.
Yeah.
Networking helps you in a number of ways. Obviously, helps you obtain some of the knowledge that you might not have. Helps you build a team if you're in that position of building a team.
It's a way to sort of look for job opportunities as well if you're not looking to build a team. But in general, it's just useful in just becoming a little bit more well known in the industry that you're trying to build a career in, I think. So what are your top networking tips, do you think?
Top networking tips?
Yeah.
Probably things not to do.
Okay, let's start with that. No, I think it's true because I think that a lot of people just go, well, you just walk in and just start talking to people, right? Yes, but also there's
Also
a little
no.
bit, yeah, there's also a little bit of planning, maybe a little bit of strategy that goes into it. Like, how would you say that you approach sort of networking events?
There definitely is strategy involved. It's not a rigid thing. It's not like I write down notes before I go in, although it can be good if you struggle with social networking in general. But yeah, I tend to go in with an idea of what I'm looking to do when I get there. For example, when I was starting my company, I was going there to meet people that could either become members of the team or interesting connections that might help me once I've formulated the company and might be useful in other ways for the business.
So it's going to be about looking for people that can help you now, but also people that could help you like much later.
Yes, for
as
sure.
well. But I think in terms of that, people obviously go in with a plan, but don't go in just looking to make those sort of surface level connections as well. It's about forming real relationships with people, because let's say you go to this event and you have like a really good time. Those same people are going to be there next year as well, and you are going to bump into them, and this time you won't be a newbie. This time you're going to be walking in going like, hey, I know this person, oh my god, how are you, how's the kids? So very much you're trying to build like a rapport and try to get comfortable in that environment and be like one of them.
I think also it's very easy. I've seen quite a few times, having been on the networking cycle for quite some time, that you do get people who feel like, I can only join for a lunch break, for example, and they come in like a tornado, like, oh, hi, here's my business card, nice to have met you all, see you later. And you're like, I don't know who that was. And like you may, if you're lucky, I've made some kind of impression where I'm like, oh, I will check that guy out. But mostly, like, you just wasted a massive opportunity where you could have gone, maybe try and find in those 15 minutes someone that you actually could or should talk to, and someone who should receive your business card. Especially if you spent time and money on making these business cards so that you can make these connections. You don't want to end up having 6 or 7 of them just gone straight into the bin. That's not a very good hit rate.
Yeah, no, true. I mean, but what you're saying about business cards is really important as well. It's like there is some preparation into going to a networking event, because again, you don't want to turn up empty-handed and be in a situation where someone's asking for your business card and you don't have any. That's probably a really bad situation, obviously, because they're obviously interested in you enough so that they've asked you for one, and if you don't have those contact details where they can follow up, that becomes, well, what's the point in going in the first place? It's just sort of
there is another way around that, though. Obviously, in the day and age where like you might not have the money to just go and splash up. I mean, business cards are generally quite cheap, and there's quite a lot of places you can get them. At the same time, like if you just don't have that money to be blowing on 50 to 100 business cards, because you tend to buy in bulk, right? Then you just make sure you have a strong online presence. But again, that takes time. Do you have a good portfolio in online somewhere? Maybe you've used a free web hosting service to do that. Are you on social medias, like different places on social media, I should say? Like we've spoken before, like LinkedIn is quite a good place to.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, to be honest, because I felt that, especially if you curate the content, as you were saying, and follow the right people, connect with interesting people that are doing interesting stuff in the industry, your feed becomes like a gold mine of just like useful information, useful contacts as well, because obviously they're interesting enough for you to connect with. They're going to be connected with lots of interesting people too. And then you just get access to these networks that you never had before. You make one really good connection on LinkedIn, they can definitely like sort of just open the industry world out for you in terms of LinkedIn anyway. But yeah, I think that it's important to choose your platform. And of course, if you're trying to be an influencer, then maybe obviously Twitter and Instagram might work better for you if you're a streamer. Sure, yeah. But if you're trying to, be a CEO of your startup, even if you're a 3D modeler trying to get into the industry, like having a strong LinkedIn presence, having a good portfolio to back that up as well, is just it's just the basics of what like companies are looking for, really, in like looking for somebody to either work with in the future or hire.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think for me personally, I've had to pull a CV together once in the past 5 years since I've started using LinkedIn. If you've got everything there visible, open to the world on LinkedIn, then you can have conversations with people. They can check you out straight away. They can be like, okay, well, this is what this person's all about. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it will work for everyone every time, but it has helped me bypass the clunkiness that you can sometimes go through with CVs. And obviously there's now systems whereby CVs aren't even particularly read by people. They're like filtered through AI systems and algorithms and stuff, and you get wiped out before you even got your foot in the door. So I think, yeah, social networking is a very strong place for making those networks and those connections.
Especially right now where, in-person events are highly discouraged, I would say. Like, I don't know if it's the same like all around the world, so we'll just like keep it like that. But right now, live events aren't a thing, so we are kind of forced to go online. And of course, there's lots of webinars and stuff like that around. It's not the same, but I think that people have found ways to socialize and network a lot more, which is part of why the Game Dev London community has become so important for a lot of people, I think. We see people on there that are, that contribute every day and chat, and it's become, a hub and a community. It's the same sort of thing with events as well. There's like a little bit of a tribe that goes along with that every year, and it's just by showing up, you are part of that environment, part of that tribe as well, so that the next time they do something, you're part of the club,
And when it's centered around a certain topic, like ours is for game development, you end up meeting people that you might not have met just through everyday life. Like, you definitely meet people, like in our Discord, like you said, we have people who are at like kind of the top end of their careers. We have people who are at the bottom end of their careers, and these two people are having conversations and helping each other out. There's stuff that you can learn from someone who's just coming in, even though you've maybe been in for like a year or two or 5 years even. And I think even that's helpful just for keeping your ideas fresh. Like, there's no point being like, oh, I know everything, because you're going to end up in trouble there probably.
Oh yeah, you never know everything. That's such a trap to fall into if you just keep humble, and know that like you don't have all the answers. And that's so true. We have an 18-year-old intern working for Arrogant Pixel, and just some of his ideas, like some of them are a bit, but a lot of them are just really out there, and just stuff that he has a completely different perspective to me, and that's just so useful in understanding what people of his generation might want to see in like a video games company as well, the kind of products that we want to release, what kind of work culture they want to actually be part of, and things like that. So useful. What are some of your tips to like start a conversation, because we know that some people can find that quite awkward? Certainly something I've had to practice a lot.
There's something that I've said to people quite a lot, and that is when you attend an event, whether it's like digital or physical, you will find that there's a few types of people that you think you're seeing when you get there. There's the people who are kind of quite quiet on the edges and they're not really saying much, and then you've got people who are having this conversation, like maybe there's 2 or 3 of them, and like having what seems like quite an interesting conversation, and then you've got some guy or some girl like in the far end of the event, and they're holding court to like 5 or 10 different people, and it's very easy to, when you get to an event like that, that you're like, oh, okay, that's that person, that's that person, that's that person. But really, that's just one person's like entire experience from being in a networking environment. So you start out like on the fringes, and you're listening to conversations and seeing, because you don't really know too much about it. So you need to know something about it before you can form an opinion. And then you become that person who has an opinion. You can chip in, and you become, and then 2 years, 3 years in, you're the person holding court and talking to everyone, explaining the journeys of game development.
No, it's so true. It's just about gaining that confidence in that environment. So I got a tip from one of my mentors, and he gave me an acronym, which is OAR. So the first one is just to observe something about the environment. Just be like, oh, the traffic was really bad today, wasn't it? Did you struggle getting here?
Nice, easy open.
Yeah. And then you'd ask something about them, and maybe you could keep it to the event. You could be like, oh, have you been to this event before? And that starts some kind of conversation. And then you could also reveal something about yourself as well. So you could say, I'm starting an indie company. What are you doing with your business, or what are you interested in? And that leads into finding a little bit more about them. What that does is it sort of tells you what they're about, whether, it sounds horrible, but whether it's worth spending the time getting to know that person over the next 15, 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, especially if they're not even remotely interested in the kind of thing that you're going to be talking about, or if you're looking for a connection with someone who can help you with something, then yeah. And again, if you've got limited time, you've got 15 minutes, then you might want to
it's good to suss that out early anyway. Even if they're like the coolest person ever, it's just like, there's a finite amount of time in the day. You got to get, people are busy as well. You don't want to try and monopolize their time either. That's true, yeah. Although it can be so easy when you meet somebody and you're sparks start flying. It's so difficult to tear yourself away and be like, oh, I'm going to speak to all of these other people. But it's good to try and exercise a little bit discipline, especially at events. Maybe less so on Discord or whatever, but at events, that's kind of what
It's also kind of quite easy to burn out in an event if you're constantly going. So you do need to pace yourself slightly. Yes, you do want to spend a certain amount of time with someone, but again, if you spend a lot of time with that person, you've put a lot of energy into it, the next person you speak to isn't going to get that full energy. They're going to get oh, hey.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I strongly advocate going to events with friends if you can. But don't just stick together though. No, you have to split up, and there has to be a plan. Okay, you work that side of the room, I work this side of the room, and then you kind of meet back, at lunch.
It's kind of easy when it's like an expo, right? You can just be like, okay, guys, what do you want to see here? Because there's so much fun stuff. Go check it out. I'll see you in 20 minutes for a lunch break or whatever. That also gives you that easy out when you're having that networking conversation. You go, it's been nice chatting to you. I've got to go meet up with my friends now to do lunch.
Oh, it's so good. I was also going to say exiting a conversation is really tough when somebody's someone's trying to monopolize you, for example. You don't.
They really want to sell you whatever it is they're trying to sell you. Yeah.
QA services, please. No, sorry, I love QA companies. I'm just saying. But it's true. Exiting a conversation when you've got a friend there, you just be like, oh, I just see my housemate over there. I'm just going to go and talk to them. I promised I'd catch up. Just be polite and respectful, and just try not to spend too much time just talking about yourself either. Although it can be very quick just to be like, okay, I'm going to pitch this person my game. That conversation can come later. This is just first contact. So treat it like you would with anything. If you were going on a date for the first time, you wouldn't
say, hey, let's get married.
Exactly. Exactly. So you just want to treat it like you would with any kind of friendship, any kind of real relationship that you have in the real world, because these are actual people and they're going to react to you in a certain way when you do that. So there's being intense, and there's being not intense enough, that sort of thing. I think in general, it helps if you think of networking as an activity rather than passive, personally. And that you sometimes have to put yourself forward in a way that you're not very comfortable doing, in that sort of scenario. Would you say that networking is quite hard for people?
Do you know, I've been networking for something like 10 years. I would say on a kind of semi-intense basis. Before that, I was just living my life, I guess. But once you get into it, even now, I go to events and I can still come away exhausted. It's a lot of thought that goes through your mind. There's a lot of things that you're juggling, and And yeah, that's what I was saying. It's really easy to burn out if you don't try and pace yourself a little bit, or just really maybe even before you plan to go, think about like, what do I want from this event? Like, because you could just go to an expo and have fun. There's like a load of games you can play, and you could just use that as like, even that can become like something that produces more ideas in your head or solidifies an idea for the game that you're making. You don't have to go, I'm going to go meet these people, I'm going to go talk to that person, I'm going to go try and meet a publisher. Like, and I have done that before myself, and it's exhausting. So you do have to kind of pull yourself back a little bit.
Yeah, it's incredibly stressful, I think, networking in general, because gosh, meeting new people is really scary. Like, because you don't know who they are for a start. They could be loud, they could be really quiet. Like, you really need to find out what their personality is like before you know what the pace of the conversation is going to be, what kind of topics you want to cover, whether like they feel really strongly about certain things, or if they don't. It's so hard to find that out.
It's as nerve-wracking as your first day at school. Like, you're about to meet a ton of people that some of them you're going to get to know for the rest of your life, some of them you might not. And each of those personalities is going to be something that you have to deal with, whatever way that is that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I think one way to like sort of get comfortable in that environment is to try to find out who the organizers are.
Yeah, for sure.
And once you're like in with the organizers, everything else tends to be a little bit easier.
I would say you can definitely do that as an organizer myself.
Yeah.
But definitely don't make that your goal. Like, it's not a case of like no one likes the teacher's pet, obviously, but like it's more of a case of you don't want to come across as like that is your top goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to network in general and get to know people in general, and the organisers are a very good place for you to do that, because you can go and talk to them. And to be honest with you, most of the time when someone approaches me in an event that I'm organising, I would just spend those first 5 minutes finding out everything that it is that I can from them.
Yeah.
And then if they're like, oh, I've been trying to do this or that and the other, I go, oh, do you know, I know exactly who you need to speak to.
Yeah, you can direct them to the right place. And that's what I found is like, I just do as much research as I can. I mean, I don't like come up with like a list of people and like mugshots or anything like that, but I will know who's important at the event, who the sponsors of the event are, and just know who might be attending, see who's been tweeting about it, like around like, the date of the event. So I'm like, okay, if I see that person, I can maybe congratulate them for this amazing event that they put on, and I'll kind of know who they are. And it's really helpful if people have like up-to-date photos as well, so that you can identify them in a crowd. But yeah, like that's how I sort of got chatting to Sam from Yuki. When I went to Guildford Games, I knew that he was the organizer because I'd been emailing him beforehand. And the funny thing is when I was emailing Sam, he mentioned that there was going to be some like an after party, and I was like, I'm not invited to the after party. Can I get in? And he was like, we can have maximum 4 people. I'm like, great, 4 tickets. And then we just had like an amazing time, and actually got to, I would say that was the event where we felt like we broke into some kind of Illuminati kind of thing.
Right.
So it was definitely useful, like just asking a question to the person that's organizing. It's their job to answer questions.
Yeah,
so
100%.
That's what they're there for. So do it. Like, think of an excuse to like ask the organizers a question.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm always happy for anyone to come up to me and be like, oh, hey, I know that this is like an event that you've helped organize. This is what I'm trying to do. And then, yeah, like I said, 9 times out of 10, I will have spoken to someone else within the room and be like, oh, yeah, you should go talk to this guy. Or even if it's not a case of like, you should talk to this guy to get that, I could be like, oh, this person's into similar interests to you. You could probably have a good conversation. Yeah. And maybe they'll link you onto someone else. You never know.
Yeah, the point is just like, in terms of networking, is try to build real relationships with people. And, you're always going to have an ulterior motive, but that shouldn't dominate the conversation, especially at a networking event, because you're going to have second contact and third contact and fourth and so on. I think on average, for like a service-based business, it takes 11 times to like 11 steps in actually like contacting the other person before you close a deal on average. In like a service industry. So you need to be prepared for it to take 4 weeks, 3 months to 6 months in
It's
order to
definitely not
get
gonna
what you
happen
want.
that day,
No.
unless you're selling something that is absolute gold dust and they see the twinkle in the eyes.
Yeah. I mean, it's very rare.
Yeah.
I think even when I was doing events with, previous company I was working for, so clients, I did a few drum shows. I did like a baby show as well, where we're selling prams, and very much so when somebody's looking at spending like B2B money, and that's quite large money normally, it's like people take it really, really slow, and they will do as much research on you as you do on them, etc. So you need to kind of be prepared for all of that. So, taking it slow benefits you, because then you can kind of gauge what they want, and you can quickly like scroll away, getting your homework done, so that you're showing them what they want to see at the end of the day. And the closer you are to them, so that you can just ask like a quick message, that you can send like a quick email or tweet, DM or something, just asking a quick question, the more likely they are to respond to you anyway. I find that in general, people don't respond to like long walls of text. If you can try to get that down to like a sentence, just be like, hey, quick favor, they tend to respond to you much better and more quickly as well.
One of the things that you probably find on LinkedIn, I know that I definitely find it on LinkedIn, is that you will get a direct message from someone, and the first thing they do is throw in their business like PDF document of like all of the services that they sell. They've never spoken to you before in their lives, but they're like, oh, hey, I hope you've got 5 minutes to, maybe we can have a call next week. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Coming on a bit strong, mate. I think in general it's just more to do with just not making the other person feel awkward. Just try to make them as comfortable as you can, because it's as uncomfortable for them as it is for you meeting you for the first time. They're nervous about you, just as worried about what kind of weirdo you might be, for example. So just know that they're on the back foot as well, especially if you've approached them. I think that in terms of just being a good networker is just practice. Those acronyms that I just said, the OAR acronyms, practice them all the time. Like, I talk to everyone. I talk to my cashier at the shop. To car parking attendant, I'll just try to like sort of practice those skills, and eventually you just get more comfortable just striking up conversation, I think.
That's definitely good advice. I think some people might struggle with that kind of level of, trying to practice talking to people and stuff. But at the same time, like, it doesn't have to be that intense.
No.
You could quite easily, like, while you're sitting working at your computer, like, just go over conversations that you might have with people in your head, or even go over conversations that people have had with you, and figure out for yourself, like, what part of that conversation felt awkward for me, and what would I have done in their shoes, like, to do it like differently, or how would I have come across instead of maybe coming across less awkward, or whatever the situation was.
Yeah, and chances are, if you feel awkward, it probably won't come across that way. It's only if you do something like majorly like embarrassing or whatever, hopefully you won't, but generally, like, people don't observe like your behavior the way that you do. So what we were saying, we were looking back on the footage last time, like, why we weren't wearing that, or why was my makeup like that, and things like that. Nobody thinks about that kind of stuff apart from
Nobody
you.
really cares.
No one cares.
And it's not even a case if they don't care. It's that if you're doing that in your head, they're doing the exact same thing in their head.
About them.
Yeah, they're not looking at you thinking things that you're thinking about you. They're thinking about them in their head.
Yeah, no. I totally get what you're saying, though. It's just, don't worry so much. Try to relax and try to make it more part of your overall everyday networking, I think.
For sure.
And that is active and it's not passive. It's something that you shouldn't wait for people to come to you. You should always be trying to, as maybe a CEO of your company, putting your best foot forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Cool. So I think that's a good place to wrap up for today. Thanks for watching this episode of the Game Dev London podcast, sponsored by Samsung King's Cross. If you'd like to learn more about Game Dev London, just visit gamedev.london. Until next time, see you in the chats.